In the lion's den, Daniel faced a terrifying situation. Surrounded by hungry beasts, he found himself in a scenario where death seemed inevitable. However, something extraordinary happened. Instead of attacking him, the lions calmed down as if an invisible force had controlled them. The atmosphere of terror transformed into one of peace and reverence, as Daniel, in deep prayer, felt the heavenly presence beside him. Daniel's story is one of the most inspiring and extraordinary in the Bible. From his prophetic visions to his unwavering courage in the face of unimaginable challenges, Daniel is a powerful example of faith and perseverance. He not only survived in a hostile environment, but thrived, demonstrating that with faith in God, even the most formidable obstacles can be overcome. Prepare to dive into the life of this prophet, whose story continues to inspire and challenge generations. Daniel's journey begins in a foreign land, where despite being far from his home and his people, he maintained his unwavering faith in God. Every episode of his life is marked by moments of trial, but also by divine interventions that demonstrate God's power and sovereignty. From exile to ascension to positions of power in the Babylonian Empire, Daniel never allowed circumstances to distance him from his devotion. In this narrative, we will explore how Daniel remained steadfast in his faith, even in the face of extreme danger, and how God used him to reveal his will and power. We will see how Daniel faced challenges that would test any human being to the limit, but instead of succumbing, he became a living testimony of God's protection and favor. This is the story of a man who, with courage and faith, changed the course of an empire's history and showed the world the power of the God of Israel. Daniel, a young man of noble lineage from Judah, was taken into exile in Babylon after King Nebuchadnezzar's conquest of Jerusalem. Far from his homeland and the temple where he worshipped God, Daniel found himself in a completely foreign environment filled with challenges. Babylon was a grand and vibrant metropolis, teeming with life, culture, and above all, the worship of pagan gods. In this new setting, Daniel and his friends would face tests that challenged their faith and identity. Nebuchadnezzar carefully selected young captives to serve in his palace. Daniel, along with his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were chosen for being healthy and intellectually sharp. They were given new Babylonian names, symbols of their submission to the new empire. Daniel became Belteshazzar, Hananiah, Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, Abednego. These names were a constant reminder that they were under the dominion of a foreign kingdom. Yet Daniel and his friends never forgot their true identity as servants of the God of Israel. Life in the palace brought luxuries and temptations, but also a test of fidelity. Nebuchadnezzar ordered that the young captives be fed with the rich food of the palace and with the royal wine. However, Daniel, determined not to defile himself with delicacies that might have been offered to pagan idols, requested permission to follow a simple diet of vegetables and water. This request, though challenging, was made with unshakable confidence in God and demonstrated Daniel's courage and determination to maintain his faith even in adverse circumstances. Daniel's decision to avoid contamination was an act of spiritual resistance. He was in an environment where everything around him encouraged assimilation and forgetting his roots and beliefs. However, he chose to remain faithful to God, even at the risk of displeasing the king. Daniel's faith was rewarded, for at the end of the 10-day test, he and his friends were healthier and more robust than any other youth in the palace. This small victory was a prelude to the great trials that Daniel would face in the future, always trusting in God's power and providence. Daniel and his friends faced one of the first great tests of their faith when they were presented with the royal diet of Nebuchadnezzar. The king decreed that the young captives be fed with the best delicacies of the palace, an honor that, for many, would be irresistible. However, Daniel knew that accepting this food would mean contamination, as many of the foods were offered to pagan idols. He decided, therefore, that he would not be corrupted, remaining faithful to the dietary laws of his faith. With courage and conviction, Daniel approached the chief of the eunuchs, requesting permission to follow a simple diet of vegetables and water. His proposal was met with reluctance, as the chief of the eunuchs feared that Daniel and his friends would become weakened, and as a result, he himself would suffer the king's wrath. But Daniel, with wisdom that seemed to surpass his age, proposed a 10-day test. If at the end of this period they were healthy, they could continue with the diet. Otherwise, they would return to the royal diet. The test was conducted, and the result was surprising. After the 10 days, Daniel and his friends were healthier and more robust than all the other youths who ate the royal food. This victory was not only physical but also spiritual. Daniel and his friends showed that even in a hostile and oppressive environment, it is possible to maintain integrity and faith. God's hand was upon them, and this did not go unnoticed by their superiors. This experience strengthened Daniel's faith and paved the way for even greater challenges he would face. The decision to remain faithful to his faith, even when it seemed easier to give in, showed the depth of his devotion to God. Daniel understood that his true strength did not come from the food he ate, but from his obedience and trust in God. This was just the beginning of a series of miracles and divine interventions that would mark the lives of Daniel and his friends in the court of Babylon. Not long after, Daniel faced one of the greatest trials of his life when King Nebuchadnezzar was tormented by a disturbing dream. The dream, which the king felt was a divine message, left Nebuchadnezzar so unsettled that he demanded that all the wise men of the kingdom not only interpret the dream, but also reveal the dream itself without him telling it. This task seemed impossible, and the wise men of Babylon despaired, for their lives were at risk if they failed. It was in this climate of fear and despair that Daniel stepped in. Upon hearing about the situation, he requested an audience with the king, and with courage, asked for time to seek the answer from God. Daniel knew that the interpretation of the dream was beyond human capacity, but he trusted that God, who reveals the deepest mysteries, would give him the necessary wisdom. He gathered his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and together they cried out to the God of heavens for mercy and revelation. In the stillness of the night, God answered Daniel through a vision. The king's dream was revealed to him, along with its interpretation. The next day, Daniel was brought before Nebuchadnezzar, and with a calm that contrasted with the tension in the air, he began to speak. He explained that the king's dream, a great statue with different parts made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, represented the kingdoms that would succeed one another on earth. The stone that destroyed the statue and became a great mountain symbolized the eternal kingdom of God, which would destroy all previous kingdoms and endure forever. Nebuchadnezzar was amazed and astonished at the accuracy of Daniel's interpretation. He prostrated himself before Daniel and acknowledged the greatness of the God of Israel. As a reward, Daniel was elevated to a position of great honor and authority, becoming governor of the entire province of Babylon and chief of all the wise men of the kingdom. This episode marked the beginning of Daniel's prophetic role, demonstrating that God was with him and would use him to reveal his plan to the world. With him came one of the greatest tests of faith for Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The king, in an act of extreme arrogance, ordered the construction of a huge golden statue on the plain of Dura. This statue, gleaming under the setting sun, was a symbol of the king's absolute power. The order was clear. At the sound of music, everyone must bow down and worship the statue. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into the blazing furnace. For Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, this order represented a direct challenge to their faith. Worshipping the statue would be a betrayal of the God of Israel, and they knew they could not yield, regardless of the consequences. When the music began to play, the vast crowd knelt, but the three young men remained standing, firm in their conviction. Their disobedience soon reached the ears of the king, who, furious, ordered that the three be brought before him. Before the king, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remained calm and resolute. Nebuchadnezzar, in his anger, gave them one last chance to bow before the statue, threatening them with the blazing furnace. But the three responded with courage. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the furnace, the God we serve can deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your hands, O king. But even if he does not, know, O king, that we will not serve your gods nor worship the golden statue you have set up." These words further inflamed Nebuchadnezzar's wrath, who ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times more than usual. The 3 young men were bound and thrown into the flames, but something extraordinary happened. In the midst of the fire, a 4th figure resembling a son of the gods appeared beside them. They walked freely in the furnace, unharmed by the flames. Nebuchadnezzar, amazed, ordered them to come out, and when they did, they were unscathed, not even the smell of fire on their clothes. This miracle not only saved their lives, but also transformed the heart of the king, who came to recognize the greatness of the God of Israel. After Nebuchadnezzar's order, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were bound and taken to the blazing furnace, heated 7 times more than usual. The intensity of the heat was such that the very soldiers who threw them into the flames were consumed by the fire. But something inexplicable happened. Inside the furnace, instead of screams of pain, there was a supernatural calm. The flames that should have been lethal became harmless to the 3 Hebrew youths. In the midst of the flames, a celestial figure appeared beside the young men. Nebuchadnezzar, watching in amazement, saw not 3 but 4 figures walking freely in the fire without any sign of injury. The king, astonished, described the 4th figure as being like a son of the gods. This was a clear testimony that God's hand was upon the 3 young men, protecting them miraculously and demonstrating his power in an unquestionable way. Nebuchadnezzar, now aware of the miracle before his eyes, called the young men out of the furnace. When they emerged, not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothes were intact without the smell of fire. This extraordinary event was a powerful demonstration of divine protection and the reward for the unshakable faith of the 3 young men. The king himself, once full of arrogance, recognized the supremacy of the God of Israel, declaring that there was no other God who could save in this way. This miracle had a profound impact not only on the lives of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but on the entire kingdom. The act of faith of the 3 young men and the divine intervention that saved them were living testimonies of God's power. Nebuchadnezzar issued a decree declaring that anyone who spoke against the God of Israel would be severely punished, for he acknowledged that this God had the power to save in a way that no other could. This event reinforced the idea that, in the midst of the most intense trials, faith in God can bring deliverance and transformation. Years passed, and Nebuchadnezzar, though a witness to miracles and manifestations of God's power, had still not fully learned the lessons of humility and reverence. One night, he was once again tormented by an enigmatic dream, different from any he had ever had. In the dream, the king saw a great tree in the middle of the earth, whose height reached the heavens. Its canopy was seen to the ends of the earth, its leaves were beautiful, and its abundant fruit provided sustenance for all living beings. However, the dream took a dark turn. A watcher, a celestial being, descended from heaven and ordered the tree to be cut down, its branches cut off, its leaves scattered, and its fruit dispersed. Only the stump and roots remained, bound with chains of iron and bronze. The tree would be left to live among the beasts of the field, and its human heart would be replaced with an animal's heart, until 7 times passed over it. Nebuchadnezzar, disturbed by this dream, once again called his magicians, enchanters, and wise men, but none could interpret the dream. Remembering Daniel's ability, the king summoned him and related the dream in detail, anxious for an explanation. Daniel, upon hearing the dream, was initially alarmed, for he understood its gravity. However, with the divine wisdom given to him, Daniel revealed to the king that the great tree represented Nebuchadnezzar himself. His greatness and power had grown immensely, but because of his pride and arrogance, he would be humbled. Daniel explained that the Watcher's decree was against the king. He would be driven from among men, live like the beasts, and his heart would be changed until he acknowledged that the Most High rules over the kingdoms of men. Despite the terrible prophecy, there was hope. The stump and roots left in the ground indicated that Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom would be restored once he acknowledged God's sovereignty. This event would be a turning point in the king's life, leading to profound spiritual transformation. After Nebuchadnezzar's death, his grandson Belshazzar ascended the throne of Babylon. Arrogant and irreverent, Belshazzar did not have the same respect for the God of Israel that his grandfather had acquired. In a grand banquet filled with wine and luxury, Belshazzar committed an act of desecration that would seal his fate. He ordered that the gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem be brought in, and with them he and his guests drank, praising the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. At the height of the celebration, something terrible and unexpected happened. A human hand appeared and began to write on the wall of the banquet hall. The words written were Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. The hall, moments before filled with laughter and music, was struck by an icy silence. Belshazzar, pale with terror, did not understand the meaning of the words, but knew that something terrible was about to happen. None of the king's wise men could interpret the meaning of the message, increasing the despair and unrest. The queen mother, seeing Belshazzar's distress, remembered Daniel, the man who had interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dreams. Daniel was summoned to the king's presence and, with the serenity and wisdom characteristic of him, began to speak. He reminded Belshazzar of what had happened to his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar, who was humbled until he acknowledged God's sovereignty. Then Daniel interpreted the writing on the wall. Mene meant that God had numbered the days of Belshazzar's reign and brought it to an end. Tekel indicated that Belshazzar had been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Parsin meant that the kingdom would be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. That very night, Belshazzar's fate was sealed. The Persian forces, led by Cyrus, invaded Babylon, and Belshazzar was killed. The desecration of the sacred vessels and Belshazzar's arrogance brought God's judgment upon him. Daniel once again demonstrated that true wisdom and power come from God, and that no earthly ruler can challenge divine sovereignty without facing the consequences. This episode marked the end of the Babylonian Empire and the beginning of a new chapter in Daniel's life under Persian rule. With the fall of Babylon, the Persian Empire, led by Cyrus, took control of the region. Cyrus, known for his policy of respect for the conquered peoples and their religions, recognized in Daniel a man of wisdom and integrity. Even under the new government, Daniel maintained his prominent position, now serving under Darius, one of the governors appointed by Cyrus. Daniel was promoted to one of the 3 high officials who supervised the satraps of the kingdom, once again demonstrating his competence and loyalty. However, Daniel's rise to power was not well received by all. Other satraps and high officials, filled with envy and resentment, began to conspire against him. Knowing that Daniel was blameless in his work and that there were no faults in his administration, they decided to attack the one aspect of his life where he could be vulnerable: his faith. These conspirators knew that Daniel's devotion to his God was unwavering, and they saw this as an opportunity to bring him down. The conspirators went to Darius with a cunning plan. They persuaded the king to issue a decree prohibiting anyone from making a petition to any god or man except the king himself for 30 days. The penalty for violating the decree would be to be thrown into the lion's den. Darius, flattered by the idea of consolidating his authority, signed the decree, making it irrevocable according to the law of the Medes and Persians. The decree was promulgated, and the conspirators eagerly awaited Daniel's downfall. When Daniel learned of the decree, he did not hesitate. As he always did, he went up to his room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem, and there 3 times a day he knelt and prayed, giving thanks to his God. The conspirators, knowing Daniel's devotion, spied on him and caught him in the act, quickly running to denounce his transgression to the king. Darius, upon hearing the accusation, was distressed, for he valued Daniel and sought every possible means to save him. But bound by the laws of the Medes and Persians, Darius could not revoke the decree, and Daniel was condemned to the lion's den. The satrap's conspiracy against Daniel was carefully planned to exploit the irrevocable law of the Medes and Persians. They knew Daniel was a man of faith, and his devotion to God was unshakable. By persuading Darius to issue a decree prohibiting prayers to any god or man other than the king, the conspirators were sure that Daniel, faithful as always, would continue to pray to his God, thus violating the new law. When Daniel was caught in the act of praying, the conspirators quickly brought the news to the king. Darius, who respected and admired Daniel, was deeply distressed upon realizing he had been manipulated. The king spent the rest of the day trying to find a way to save Daniel, but the laws of the Medes and Persians were inflexible. Even as king, Darius could not revoke the decree he had signed. With a heavy heart, he ordered that Daniel be thrown into the lion's den, but not without expressing his hope that Daniel's God would save him. That night, Darius could not sleep. He was tormented by Daniel's fate, a man he knew to be just and faithful. Meanwhile, in the darkness of the den, Daniel faced a situation that seemed to be his last. But in the midst of darkness and danger, something extraordinary happened. God sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths, and Daniel remained unharmed. What should have been a night of terror turned into a testament to Daniel's unwavering faith and the divine protection that accompanied him. At dawn, Darius hurried to the den and, with a trembling voice, called out to Daniel, "Servant of the living God, has your God, whom you continually serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Daniel's response, clear and strong, filled the king's heart with relief and joy. Daniel was brought out of the den without a single scratch, and his accusers, who had plotted against him, were thrown in his place, where the hungry lions devoured them before they reached the ground. Darius, amazed by the power of Daniel's God, issued a new decree, proclaiming that all in the kingdom must fear and reverence Daniel's God, for he is the living God, and his kingdom shall never be destroyed. Perfect, member of the Dark Creators, let's continue with the next part of the script, covering subtitles 11 to 15. Daniel, a man of unshakable faith, was thrown into the lion's den because of his devotion to God. Despite his innocence and Darius's attempt to save him, the law of the Medes and Persians could not be revoked, and the sentence was carried out. The den, dark and filled with hungry lions, should have been his end. However, what happened that night was nothing short of a miracle. Daniel, surrounded by beasts, was not attacked, for God sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths, protecting him from any harm. While Darius spent the night sleepless, worried about Daniel's fate, the prophet, in the midst of darkness, remained firm in his faith. He knew his life was in God's hands, and this trust kept him calm, even in the face of such a terrible threat. The silence in the den contrasted with the terror the lions would normally inspire, for God's presence turned a place of death into a space of divine protection. The night dragged on slowly, but Daniel remained unharmed, protected by the Almighty's hand. At the break of dawn, Darius rushed to the den, anxious to know if Daniel's God had indeed intervened to save him. His voice, full of hope and fear, echoed through the den as he called for Daniel. The prophet's response, strong and clear, was a powerful testament to God's faithfulness. "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so they wouldn't harm me." Darius, relieved and amazed, ordered Daniel to be lifted from the den. To everyone's surprise, Daniel was unharmed, without a scratch. The miracle in the lion's den not only saved Daniel's life, but also had a profound impact on the kingdom. Darius, an eyewitness to God's power, issued a new decree, declaring that all in the kingdom should fear and reverence Daniel's God, for he is the living God, whose kingdom is eternal. Daniel's faith, tested to the extreme, was rewarded with a miraculous deliverance that not only confirmed his devotion, but also demonstrated to the world the unquestionable power of the God of Israel. Daniel's miraculous deliverance from the lion's den was a clear act of divine intervention. This event not only saved Daniel from certain death, but also revealed to King Darius and all in the kingdom the immense power and sovereignty of the God of Israel. Daniel's protection within the den, where he should have been devoured by the beasts, was a demonstration that God is the true ruler, capable of controlling even the most fearsome forces of nature. Darius, deeply impressed and touched by what he witnessed, understood that Daniel's God was no ordinary God. This was the living God, whose authority and power surpassed all others. In response to the miracle, Darius issued a decree throughout his kingdom, proclaiming that all should fear and revere Daniel's God. This decree was a testament to the recognition of divine sovereignty, a drastic change in a kingdom where multiple gods were worshipped. Darius's decree marked a moment of great triumph for Daniel, who instead of being destroyed by his enemies, saw his faith exalted and his God honored. The conspirators who plotted against Daniel were punished, showing that human schemes cannot prevail against divine plans. Daniel's victory was not only personal, it was a victory of God over the forces of evil that sought to destroy his faithful. This event served as a powerful reminder to the kingdom and all who heard the story. God protects his own, and divine justice will prevail over human wickedness. God's intervention in Daniel's life is an eternal example that when we place our trust in him, we can face the greatest challenges with the certainty that he is with us. Daniel's story in the lion's den is one of the strongest declarations of God's protection and faithfulness, inspiring faith and courage in all who know it. After his miraculous deliverance from the lion's den, Daniel continued to serve under the Persian government, where his wisdom and faith were continuously recognized. But his life was not just marked by acts of courage and visible miracles. Daniel was also a prophet, receiving powerful visions about the future of the earth's kingdoms and the establishment of God's kingdom. These visions, full of symbols and mysteries, revealed to Daniel the course of world events, from human empires to the ultimate triumph of the division kingdoms. One of Daniel's most remarkable visions involved a sequence of beasts, each representing a kingdom that would rise and dominate the earth. A lion with eagle's wings, a bear, a leopard with 4 birds' wings, and a fourth indescribable, terrible, and powerful beast with 10 horns. These kingdoms, symbolized by the beasts, would rise and fall, each fiercer and more dominating than the last. However, in the end, Daniel saw the emergence of a little horn that uprooted 3 of the 10 horns of the 4th beast, a figure that boasted against the Most High. But the scene changed when Daniel had a vision of the Ancient of Days, a figure that symbolizes God on his throne. Before him, the kingdoms of men were judged and destroyed, and the dominion was given to a Son of Man who received dominion, glory, and an everlasting kingdom. This powerful vision showed Daniel that despite the struggles and ascensions of earthly kingdoms, the kingdom of God would prevail. This kingdom would be just, eternal, and bring peace and justice to all who trust in it. Daniel's visions about the future are of great importance, not only for his time, but for all the generations that followed. They reveal not only the fragility of human kingdoms, but also the certainty of God's kingdom, which will come to establish eternal justice and peace. Daniel, through these revelations, became a beacon of hope for all who face the uncertainties of the world, reminding them that the future belongs to God and his sovereignty is absolute. Daniel's visions not only revealed future events on earth, but also opened a window to the spiritual conflict taking place in the heavenly realms. In one of his visions, Daniel saw a celestial figure, an angel, who spoke to him about an invisible battle between the forces of good and evil. The angel explained that he had been sent in response to Daniel's prayers, but was delayed for 21 days due to the resistance of the prince of the kingdom of Persia, an evil spiritual entity. Only with the help of Michael, one of the most powerful angelic princes, could the angel finally reach Daniel. This account revealed to Daniel that beyond the visible battles between earthly kingdoms, there is a constant spiritual war occurring in the celestial realm. The nations of the earth are influenced by spiritual forces, and God's angels are engaged in a relentless struggle against the powers of darkness to fulfill the divine plans. This spiritual battle is crucial, as it determines the course of events on earth, even if it is invisible to human eyes. Daniel's vision of the spiritual battle underscores the importance of prayer and faith. Daniel's prayers triggered a response in heaven, showing that although humans are limited in power, their prayers have a significant impact in the spiritual realm. The angel's account also demonstrates that God is not distant or uninterested in human affairs. He is actively involved in the fight against the forces of evil, and his angels are continually working to protect and guide his people. This spiritual conflict, though invisible, is a reality that all believers must recognize. The forces of evil are real, but the ultimate victory belongs to God. Daniel's vision offers comfort and encouragement, reminding us that even when we face challenges and adversities, we are not alone. God and his angels are fighting alongside us, and in the end, God's kingdom will prevail over all the forces of evil. Daniel's life, marked by courage, faith, and divine revelations, is an inexhaustible source of inspiration for all who seek to follow God with integrity. From his youth, Daniel faced immense challenges, from resisting assimilation into a pagan culture to interpreting enigmatic dreams and surviving a den of hungry lions. In each situation, his faith was his strength, and his unwavering devotion to God brought not only miraculous deliverances, but also powerful testimonies that impacted entire kingdoms. Daniel's story teaches us that true greatness is not found in power or wealth, but in firm faith and a life of integrity before God. Daniel never compromised his principles, even when his life was at risk. His willingness to remain faithful, regardless of the circumstances, is an example that resonates to this day. He shows us that even in a hostile world, it is possible to live a life that honors God, and that in doing so, we can influence those around us in profound and lasting ways. As we reflect on Daniel's life, we are challenged to consider how our own faith can be strengthened. Daniel faced lions, conspiracies, and visions of future kingdoms, but in every situation, he trusted fully in God. His story invites us to examine our own faith and ask if we are willing to trust God in the same way. In a world full of uncertainties and challenges, Daniel's example encourages us to keep our faith unshakable, knowing that God is always by our side, ready to intervene on our behalf. Finally, Daniel's life reminds us that our journey of faith is not just about us, but about the impact we can have on the world. Daniel influenced kings, interpreted mysteries, and revealed visions that shaped history. His life is a testament to what God can do through a faithful servant. May we be inspired by Daniel to live with the same courage and faith, trusting that God can use our lives to fulfill his eternal purposes. And if you have not yet made the decision to follow Christ or wish to renew your commitment, now is the time. Leave your comment below and allow God to transform your life as he transformed Daniel's.